Welcome to Startup Grind Malta. Can you please guys sit in the front as possible? Thank you so much to be here. How many of you know what is Startup Grind? Oh, you know? Okay. Startup Grind is the largest community of entrepreneurs in the world. We are here to connect, inspire, and educate the future generation. So we are present in 500 cities, in more than 150 countries, with an active members of 1.5 million entrepreneurs. So we go around the world spreading this beautiful value. Give first, don't take. Help others before yourself. Make friends, not contact. As I always like to say, this is not my community. I'm not the director of Startup Grind. I'm just the facilitator of these tools that I want to bring here in Malta and give to the Maltese people. And we all together can we can use these tools to actually improve the ecosystem of startups in Malta. So we are a big family, and here now today it's with me Dimitris from Athens that I want to invite, and he will share some word about what is Startup Line and why he's here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah. Wow, it's amazing because what Andrea says is absolutely true. It's not like a slogan that you see over there with amazing values that nobody cares about. It's actually every single chapter director from all around the world. They take these values very, very seriously. I used to work for Startup Grind as a community manager, growing the community in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And whenever I was, interviewing, let's say, a potential candidate for a director, I was looking for these three values, and I could immediately see for Andrea, he had all these things. Like, it was so obvious. So that's how we deploy this community around the world, and we build great relationships. We also have a big conference in Silicon Valley every February. It's just like Malta Blockchain Summit in terms of size, but totally different, content. And we also have another one in London every June. We call it Startup Grind Europe, and then we kind of bring this amazing community together in these big conferences, and we fly all these directors to Silicon Valley or in Europe. So I think this is an amazing opportunity, first of all, to network, to exchange ideas, not only in Malta, but internationally. We always have to think about what's out there. So I strongly suggest you guys get involved. If you have any kind of feedback, just share it with Andrea. And yeah. Speaking about London, I would also like to introduce Upita, who comes from London and Startup Grind London, right?
Thank you very much, Dimitris, and thank you all for coming. It's been a crazy week as you all been to Malta Blockchain Summit. Yeah, you can hear it from my voice, I suppose. Yeah, it's been it's a great momentum for Malta. So we decided to open the chapter here in Malta with a goal to reach 600 chapters by the end of this year. And how we do this is by working through different concepts with different verticals. So in London we have a startup team that works with many different startups. We have more than 3.5 million registered entrepreneurs on the platform. So we also support these startups with different Google products, because we are the part of Google for Startups, which used to be Google for Entrepreneurs. And we also work with different governments through the project called Symposium. And we started it in London with one meeting, and from just one meeting, we had a partnership with Estonia government to launch the e-residence, where you can now set up a company and a bank account in just 10 minutes. So with the Malta ecosystem, we teamed up with various different organizations here, with MCA to support the Delta, where Dimitris was one of the speakers. With Malta Innovation Summit, we teamed up with Johan, who's going to be talking later at the panel. And obviously with the MITA as well, which is Malta Innovation Technology Association. And what they are doing, it's a wonderful thing. So MITA is doing the first official government blockchain accelerators, which I probably you've heard of. We helped promote a bit that program internationally, and the applications came up very strong, which was I was very happy to see that. So we'll have Alex Borg here today to tell you more about that. But we also made a few really nice partnerships with people like Oliver also, who's gonna tell you about what he does with his own startup, and also something that's called European Chamber of Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Commerce, something like that. It's, that's why the acronyms are good, you know.
Stay with the UCC for now.
Yes. Okay. So, but it gives me the greatest honor to work with Steve Tanner, who's you probably know of as Mr. Malta Blockchain. We met in London. He did a fantastic presentation. He started to work with the governments here in Malta in 2016. He pushed really hard to basically let us be where we are today. Yeah, and let me just remind you that we have a Revolut card here that Dimitris you can take them. Revolut is officially here since last month, and they're all free, and you can use them. And soon they will be launching a business account within the app, which is quite useful. They are working on setting up a cryptocurrency exchange that will go out of the app, so it won't stay just in the ecosystem. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing that's happening here. Sorry, my voice is totally over. So I would like to invite to the floor one and only Steve Tennant to tell you more about artifacts, softwares, and legal things. Probably heard this presentation yesterday, but you know what I struggled at the Malta Blockchain Summit was a bit hectic for me. The whole program, there were too many people, too many things. So today it's more about meeting you guys and then hearing what you have to say and how can we help, how can we all connect and kind of make the future. That's why this is a last event for the Blockchain Week, because we want to continue doing this every month. So Steve, please join me.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I guess you have discovered there is this thing called the blockchain island. Yes? And I think many will say I'm the culprit for this whole blockchain island, as Professor introduced me. Yes. And today's topic is going to be understanding a bit of the laws around this and say what has law to do with being a startup. And unless you're a lawyer, I think we have one gentleman here, you typically look at law and regulations as something very, very boring and can't make the connection with innovation and startups. And in fact, in the whole space of cryptocurrencies, you have the ideology of the cypherpunks and libertarianism and anarchy and you name it. And many of those views are, to a certain extent, even shareable, because regulation and governments have maybe gone overboard in many aspects. But we must also be observant and see what are the positive things that laws and regulation bring about. And I'm utterly convinced that they do help innovation. I just want to give like this historical reflection. When the car came about, the first vehicles were being driven on roads full of horses and people, and someone went in front of the car with a red flag and said, "Watch out, this is dangerous, keep out of the way." But then as the technology progressed and you started to have more and more cars, well, at a certain point you needed to have rules. You needed to understand how do we engage one with another in this new medium of transportation. Who has the right of way? Who has to stop? On which side of the road do you drive? Here in Malta, it's probably on the shadow side. Johan, you know this? You told me once, I guess. Yeah, never mind. So on a rainy day, you really don't know what side of the road you drive in Malta. But anyway, you see the point. Regulation creates a space for innovation. And I think that's the idea to keep in mind. I won't explain what I've done because I've been introduced so well by Peter. But I'm just so proud that I got this award 2 days ago, the outstanding contribution to the blockchain island. Made me really, really happy. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. So we started working on this in 2016, and the idea was to aim at the blockchain technology, because we see this as a technology that will change the world. We are not the crypto island, we're not the Bitcoin island, we're not the Ethereum island. It's the blockchain island. And we saw the opportunity to transform Malta into crypto economic superpower. That's very ambitious. We started off with a number of strategic plans whereby the adoption of the technology would enter into the public service space. And we also invented this new regulator, the Malta Digital Innovation Authority. And again, notice the name, Digital Innovation. It's not the Malta Blockchain Authority or the Malta Crypto Authority, because the idea is to foster and protect innovation. Of course, in all of this, we also took care of what everyone was expecting, the regulation of cryptocurrencies, ICOs, tokens, the financial side, but really focus was on blockchain technologies. We started in 2016, so in times where this was under the radar screen in most of the world. In 2017, we had the explosion of the ICOs and the rocket evaluation of the Bitcoin, with the consequence that many jurisdictions started regulating in a kind of reactive mode, and started looking only at the financial aspects. But we were working on the long term, on the decentralized computation aspect and what that means in terms of digital economy. I won't go into the details here, but just move quickly over to how does this look like. We have right now 3 laws. The first one is specifically for that situation of the ICOs, the tokens, the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, the cryptocurrencies, and that is the Virtual Financial Assets Act. This one is mandatory. You have to comply to the rules of this law if you're acting in that space. But the more interesting laws are the other ones, the Malta Digital Innovation Authority Act, whereby we have this new regulator. And why did we need a regulator? Because we were seeing that we had this technology which was spanning every aspect of the economy, 360 degrees, and the risk was that you would have one regulator contradicting another one. In fact, that happened. It happened in autumn of 2017, where we had, for instance, the Malta Financial Services Authority giving certain guidelines which were contradicted or contradictory to other guidelines or suggestions coming from the Malta Gaming Authority. So we were already experiencing the problem. So the idea was to have one other authority in place that could look at the problem of innovation and avoid these divergence of interpretations. In the US, we see this problem to its extreme, where we have like the SEC on the one side and the Commodities and Futures Trade Commission on the other side. One is saying Bitcoin is a currency, the other one is saying Bitcoin is a commodity, and then you have their equivalent tax department that still has not made up their mind. But it seems that if you buy a cup of coffee in the US with a Bitcoin, and maybe you might correct me because you know more about this, but if you do that, you're basically doing a barter. So the cup of coffee is double taxed. That makes a lot of sense, right? So we want to avoid that situation and give very clear guidelines on who is responsible for what. The other law is the Innovative Technology Arrangements and Services Act, and this is primarily a way for a startup to optionally, voluntarily get their technology certified. Why optionally? Why don't we impose this? Well, because it's decentralized. You cannot regulate a decentralized technology. We are very much aware of that. We don't have the distorted mindset and idea of many other regulators that still believe that they can do something about this technology and put their hands on it. It's out there in the cryptosphere. I don't say the cloud, I say the cryptosphere, protected by math, cryptography, and you can't get at it. So how can you do? Well, are you all familiar with Satoshi Nakamoto and his white paper? He did a marvelous thing there. He resolved the Byzantine general's problem, and it was through technology, through data structures, through algorithms, but also through social engineering. He created this incentive schemes, which is what we know with mining, where people are incentivized in order to have a certain behavior. So the whole idea here is that we need to create some incentive for the creators of the technology in order to behave in a certain way. So we're focusing on the creators of the technology, not on the technology. It's turning the perspective around. Most regulators would be thinking, how do we regulate the technology? We say, you cannot do that. Create incentives so that you will see the desired behavior from the community of developers. And yes, the Virtual Financial Assets Act is the equivalent of what we see in other jurisdictions for the financial part, and that corresponds to generation 1 of blockchains, the Bitcoin typically, where you have decentralized storage of value. But going forward, we have focus on decentralized computation, decentralized logic, DIOs, smart contracts, and that is what makes Malta's legal framework so much different, because all others are stuck there on generation 1. We are talking about how do we handle generation 2 of this technology. And in fact, going forward, we have this 4th bill, which I want to expand on in a few slides, the Innovative Technologies Foundations Bill, which has this very weird idea of recognizing legal personality to what we call a technology arrangement. In other words, a piece of software gains legal personality just as if it were an individual or a corporation. And that, since we're talking about startups, that is really innovation in terms of laws. There are some terminology things to go through. Now this, I will skip. If you want to learn about the laws, they are available on the regulators' respective websites. The only thing to point out is that we have some very high standards in terms of writing white papers. If you want to run an ICO here, well, first of all, it's not going to be called an ICO, it's going to be called a Virtual Financial Assets Offering. It's not like the white paper you used to write in 2017. You have many things to cater for. The process is going to be also costly, there is a cost of compliance. So that also means that a startup that has the ambition to fund itself through this mechanism will necessarily need to have traditional funding upfront, which means that the normal cycle of startups, which Alex is helping with, getting seed, angel investment, and early venture cap in early, is more relevant than ever. You need funding just to get to the start of running an ICO. So now to the point of legal personality. Already in February, when we announced that these laws were about to come, we had this paragraph in the document that described what was going to happen. We were looking at the possibility of transacting on and with the technology arrangement without a proper legal person as counterparty. Certain technology arrangements will be able to register with the Registrar for Legal Persons in Malta and acquire legal personality upon satisfaction of a number of requirements. That is quite a mouthful, and it was the only paragraph in I think it was around 35, 40 pages that hinted at that this was about to happen. We are not there yet, but we are in a stage where we have drafted the laws and where this is ready for public consultation and debate. Probably will happen in the next 4 to 6 months, I would guess. So why does this become relevant? And I start with a challenging question. Who is the smartest guy in the crypto space? Is it Satoshi Nakamoto or Vitalik Buterin? You all know who they are. Vitalik Buterin, the father of Ethereum, second generation blockchain, and Satoshi, the father of the Bitcoin. Well, the problem here is if something goes really bad, who do we get at? It's the principle of the nearest person. And as the blockchain technology is going to carry more and more of the global economy, at a certain point, either through negligence or through hacking, or just because we are unlucky, there is a bad bug in the code. If you are into software, you know we are very good at creating bugs, so that can really happen. Someone will have huge damage, and when there is huge damage, you want to find who is the culprit. In the case of the Bitcoin, we don't know. Satoshi Nakamoto, he or she or it, is unknown, so there is no one to get at. But in the case of Vitalik, we know. We can't get at him. And here the problem is that since the blockchain is global, well, damage could be claimed in almost any jurisdiction. And you probably don't want to have a legal problem in a country that maybe is not so good at upkeeping human rights. So you see that this is starting to change the perspective. We are not looking at it as what is in it for the technology. The decentralized blockchain doesn't care about us human beings, doesn't need regulation. But we need, because we create problems within us, even if there is this technology in between that has, yes, disintermediated many other players, the bankers foremost, but is still something in between me and you, and you and you. And if something goes bad, we humans want to retaliate. So this is the problem. And it's even worse, because in, I think it was 2016, there was the famous case of the DAO. You familiar with the DAO? Almost all of you. So basically it was this software that was acting as a company, was collecting funds, and the people who put in the funds could decide where those funds were going to be employed, as if it were a venture cap. Now, it just so happened that because of a defect in the code, let's put it that way, there was a vulnerability, and I don't remember how many millions of dollars were hacked out. There is a huge controversy whether that was really theft or not, because there is this idea that in this world, code is law, and I have my opinions about that, but that is not the point. The point is that at a certain point, sorry for the twisted wording, the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission in the US, said that, well, the investors in this were obviously responsible. So I was scratching my head because I was part of that. I had invested money, that money was stolen, and now I was responsible for that. What a wonderful way of thinking. No, it didn't work. So this got me inspired to start thinking about what can we do about this? Because the point is that there are side effects and things that cannot be foreseen. And many times that is completely out of reach of the actors that interact in between themselves through the technology. And those are the instances that we're trying to handle. So why legal personality? I just mentioned the case of Satoshi Nakamoto. He's an anonymous designer. If something goes bad, you can't get at him. So good luck. You had damage, you have to live with it. But it's even worse, because even in the case of Vitalik Buterin, we human beings, at least up until now, are still mortal. We will disappear sooner or later. And this creates the problem of the extinction of the designer. The creation that is on the blockchain is like this wonderful elephant that remembers everything, never forgets anything. That creation will live there forever. It will continue to offer its services forever. And if at a certain point it provokes damage after the extinction of the designer, you're back to square one. You have damage, but you have nowhere where you can get your claims through. There is the case of consumer protection, or investor protection, like in the case of the DAO. Those that consume the services of these technology arrangements or invest in them and maybe even get governance rights, well, they might also receive damage in one form or another. So they must also be catered for. There are more subtle cases where we see the need for something that we don't have. And one is the evolving legislation. Because if we are in a situation where we attribute legal personality to a piece of software, and as I will explain later, that will be achieved only if the software has certain features, quality, attributes, behaviors, aspects, and the law changes, which maybe renders some of those features, qualities, attributes, and so on illegal, well, you just legislated something is legal while it's there on the blockchain and will not change. We already have this problem. The GDPR is the case. The GDPR says that you have the right to be forgotten, but this technology is such that it's incompatible with that legal requirement. It will remember everything, and there is no right to be forgotten on the blockchain. Now, there are many ways to come around this, and there are many interpretations, but the fact remains that in a permissionless public blockchain, things are remembered forever. So, if in this particular reasoning, the law evolves, there is a necessity to evolve the law in such a way that existing behavior on the blockchain becomes illegal, well, you are basically hindering the evolution of law, and we don't want that. We want the law to be able to keep up with whatever we learn as we go forward. So if there is a legal personality, one of the requirements in order to achieve legal personality is that whatever this new legal person does, it must be lawful. And there are ways to make that happen. Then looking even more forward, we clearly see that these decentralized autonomous organizations will start interacting in between themselves. They will start offering services, they will maybe use directory services to find one another. They will subscribe to services, they will pay for services, and at a certain point we will have value chains of DAOs, of decentralized autonomous organizations, and at the periphery, at the end of these chains, we are there again. And if something goes wrong in that chain, it is even more difficult to find who is the culprit, which head are we going to take and chop off. So we need something there that resolves this. There is another aspect which relates to the fact that the blockchain is global, but the legal systems in the world are constructed within jurisdictions. So you must be able to have the DAO make a choice of law. So just like when you write a contract, at the bottom you say, no, if something goes bad, we will go to the courts of Valletta or to London. You make a choice of jurisdiction. And we must be in a situation where we are allowing this flexibility, notwithstanding that the software artifact is in fact global. And we also have provisions for that. The last, I've skipped a few points, but the last one which I like to mention is this notion of the oracle. What is an oracle? It's something that is off-chain, it's in the real world, and provides effective data from the world to this decentralized software. One example you can relate to is maybe weather data, which could drive the decisions made by some insurance application on the software. If you're insuring crops and you're in farming, that is very, very common. What is the problem here? It's that the software is relying on a source of information which is outside of the chain. And if that source is, by any chance, defective, the software will make wrong decisions and maybe might be sued. So what does the software do at that point? Well, if it has legal personality, the software can sue whomever is the oracle. Think about that. We are having the software, a piece of software, that is suing you, a human being. It's really backwards. But we need to cater for this scenario because the oracle industry is going to be absolutely fundamental for all of this to be working. So, now I won't go into the details here, because then it gets too technical from a legal perspective, but I just want to make the parallels so you see how we are reasoning. There is a structure which is the foundation. The foundation has typically a purpose, but it is ownerless. The Bitcoin protocol and algorithm, they have a purpose. They are there to permit the transaction of value between peers. But the Bitcoin protocol and algorithm is ownerless. No one is in charge of that. Well, that's a very interesting parallel. So if we have like the possibility of seeing the equivalence of a piece of software and a foundation, we are at a good starting point. The only twist is that a real foundation in the world typically has a governance structure. But in software, in a DAO, you don't need a governance structure. It's the whole point of disintermediation. So what do? We can recognize that the governance function is not executed by people, but it is being provided by the software itself. And in that case, we are in a situation that can move forward. But we need something more, one final step. In order to be able to exercise liability claims, this legal or candidate legal personality, well, first of all, it must adhere to the law. So the purpose that it defines must be lawful. And then it must be given legal capacity. And we already saw the example when that is needed. If this thing needs to sue an oracle, well, it needs the capacity to do that. And second here, or third, the most important point of all, it must develop a patrimony. In other words, this software must get rich, really rich, because if it sits on a pot of money, well, then it can cover damage that comes from any claim. And if we're able to do that, to make sure that this software has a patrimony, well, then liability is of course possible. So how do we make this happen? Well, it's just by reasoning there in terms of Satoshi Nakamoto and create the incentive. What is the incentive for a designer to do this? Because remember, the designer has to do a choice, a design choice, which means implementation. The designer will have to implement certain features, qualities, attributes, behaviors, aspects, it's a long list of things, in order for that piece of software to become, quote, quote, a good citizen. And when it behaves like a good citizen, then it may be awarded legal personality. So why would a software developer take that effort? Why would it do that, he or she? Why? And here we just go back to basic human needs. We want our work to make a difference, we want to be successful, exactly as any startupper wants his or her startup to be successful. And here is the reasoning. If we have two solutions which are exactly equivalent, there is no difference from a point of view of functionality, no difference from a point of view of costs. They are exactly the same thing, only that one has legal personality and is offering investor protection, consumer protection, guarantee that it's being lawful. On the market, on the free market, the consumer, the investor, which one will they bet on? I think that's an easy choice. So the developer, the designer, if he wants to have higher odds of success, he would probably like his creature to have legal personality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve, for this wonderful presentation. Yes, before we move to another panel, so agenda for today is we're gonna do a short panel and then we're gonna go down to have some food and drinks. But what I have to say is a huge thanks to David from Lowersilking, who has been supporting Startup Grind more than 4 years now. He's been supporting our very first events, and he's been with us through all these years. And Lowersilking is one of the best legal firms in London I know of. They're all involved in tech, in blockchain as well. They've been running some of the kind of biggest ICOs as well. So huge thanks to David for this. What I would like to do is give mic to Andrea, as he's a co-director. He's the director of Malta. So yeah, Andrea, please take it over.
Thank you. Actually, what I want to say, this is an exception of Startup Grind because we want to have fun. All respect with Steve Tendon. Usually, Startup Grind will be a fireside chat, a brainstorming with people. We presented Steve Tendon because what he did in Malta is amazing. But now it's a kind of panel where we can ask to bright people what we want to ask. And it must be interactive with all of us. So we're gonna have fun in the conversation. So I'm going to introduce Carla Vela, a consultant in Consult XD, founder and consultant.
Hi, everyone.
And she will run the panel, will moderate the panel. And Johan Zamit from Smart Studios, and Alex Borg from Meta, and David from London, and Oliver La Rosa, which is partner with Startup Grind, and I think also Steven Tendon, where now people can ask you everything you want.
Wonderful. Hi everyone. My voice has completely gone after the last 2 days. I just lost my phone half an hour ago, so I'm completely unprepared. But can I just ask the few of you that are kind of behind there, can you guys come a little bit closer? Because I kind of would like this to be a little bit more like roundish interactive. It would be optimal if we didn't even have to use a microphone, but you know. Great. Good. Did anybody go to the after party yesterday? No, yes.
Well, they are not here.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. And it's just so nice to have been part of what we've all experienced on Blockchain Island this last couple of days. I know a few of my panelists, but I don't know them all. So this is also me getting to learn about who they are and what they're doing. So bear with me. Please remember that I just told you that I lost my phone. So all the notes that I did have are not on me. So this is going to be great. But one of the things I wanted to just say before I got started is that this is about you guys just as much as it's about us. So please feel free to be part of the conversation. If you hear something that you think is just like a flaming bag of poo, please tell us, because that's what we're all here to kind of discuss. That was a nice way of putting it, huh? Okay. All right. So I'm Carla. I'm Maltese Australian, Goziton raised, living in Malta. I run a consultancy company called Consult XD. I'm doing my second master's in blockchain by the University of Nicosia. I have an executive background in, I was CEO of a former CEO of a VC here in Malta. Prior to that, I was was managing director of one of the largest gambling companies on the island. Before that, I had my own startups and so on and so forth. That's me. Alex?
Yeah, thank you. So as indicated earlier, I manage the You Started Accelerator run by the Meet Innovation Hub. And for the last call, we basically themed it around blockchain. And so basically now we're the next batch is going to start on Monday. In fact, I'm very happy to have here Andrea, who's going to be one of the startup founders. And we've been running this program for the past now 2 years. We're in the 4th edition. I myself represent MITA. MITA is the Malta IT agency. MITA's core remit is to deliver essentially IS and IT services to public administration. However, we've started this initiative very recently to help in stimulating and incentivizing tech entrepreneurship in Malta, and of course to support policy of government. In this particular case, blockchain is a very important element of this. So that's from my end.
I think I don't need to repeat. So you're...
Hi, I'm Johan Zammit. I'm the founder and CEO of Smart Studios. Smart Studios is a venture at the intersection of blockchain, AI, and IoT. At the moment, we're focusing mostly on blockchain development. So we help organizations design blockchain systems, develop them, and take them to market. My background is have always been in software engineering. I co-founded Netrefer. Before that, when I was 26, 27, I started my first software development company. And since then, I was always in software development. And now with Smart Studios, I'm living the startup. I'm in startup mode again because it's just 12 months that we've been running Smart Studios. So I'm actually in startup mode again myself. Apart from that, I'm also the chair of the Malta Innovation Summit, which happened in mid-October. Maybe you've seen it or you attended. I'm also a board member of Silicon Valletta, which is also something related to this scene. It's an organization of tech entrepreneurs in Malta. And last but not least, I really enjoy mentoring the startups of Alex. They're at Meta. They're doing a wonderful job with their accelerator. So that's me.
I'm David. I'm from Lewis Silkin. We're a law firm in London. I've been working with tech companies for 15 years on financings, acquisitions, listings, and with investors as well. And one of the things that I always enjoy doing is going to other territories, because even though I can only advise on sort of transactions in London, clearly it's a place where a lot of people go for their next round of financing. So coming and seeing ecosystems as they're at an earlier stage, building themselves up, is really exciting for me. I enjoy doing it. When I was offered the chance to come and help here, I was delighted to do it.
Hi, Oliver La Rosa. I have a background in banking and IT. I came to Malta 5 years ago with my IT companies and led an IT support team here in Malta for banks in 7 European countries, where we did the whole IT support. And in 2017, I joined blockchain. Since then, I've been representing Malta in different associations. And 3 months ago, we have been founding the European Chamber of Commerce for DLT and cryptocurrencies. And as such, we have just now connected with Startup Grind, and we closed a partnership. And now we'll also be offering a co-working space in cooperation and bringing hopefully more and more business to Malta. And apart from that, I also have a commercial project, not only the non-for-profit ones, which is a cryptocurrency exchange, Globiant.
I need the mic. Thank you. Yeah, I know a few. I don't know the last two gentlemen yet, but so hopefully this will be a little bit of exploration as well on that front. Okay, I have a few questions for you guys. Who in the audience is an entrepreneur? Who is focusing on something blockchain specific, not just the entrepreneurs, but focus on blockchain? Okay. And who's a resident? Okay, just to get a little bit of a feeling. Are there any other like non-blockchain, is somebody a non-blockchain entrepreneur focusing on maybe IoT, big data or yeah?
IoT too, so.
Pardon?
IoT too.
Okay, cool. All right, wonderful. Thanks for speaking up. All right, well, I'm gonna start in the easy place for me, I guess, funding. Because I know that a lot of the government and local initiatives are really helping startups bridge the gap towards their first preliminary steps. My God, like honestly, I can't even pronounce cinnamon anymore. This morning it took me 5 minutes going cinnamon. It's one of those days. My apologies, guys. So when it comes to funding, we've got lots of initiatives leading the way towards larger rounds, and that's where individuals like David, like you see startups probably at a little bit latter stage of the preliminary rounds. So we have Meta with their incubation kind of model. We also have the Malta Enterprise with their 3 initiatives that Anthony David Gutt has been talking about the last couple of days. And if you don't know what they are, I can send you guys a link because I have that recorded somewhere in my archives of podcasts. But let's start in getting a little bit of a feeling of the first initial steps of funding and what's the place to look for and how you go about that. Can I pass this around? Is that a good question? I hope you just say yes, Carl. It's an amazing question.
Okay, well, from my end, we've been running this program, and we're in the 4th edition. And I think the program is an excellent, a good opportunity for somebody for ideators and startup founders that want the initial seed to validate and test their idea on the market. So, and to address that need, we have designed this program, which lasts 4 months, and provides a 30,000 euro pre-seed. And it's a kind of high pressure learning by doing program. So basically, one of the obligations is that to be given this funding, you need to cooperate, which is basically the necessary evil that every entrepreneur has to go through. And then the funding is dispersed against set milestones. So each startup has its own customized plan, and then depending on the performance, the seed is dispersed. And of course, we plug in mentors. The mentors are the people, I think, who give an enormous value, because we have a growing network of mentors. Johan here has been amazing. In fact, I mean, I was nearly feeling awkward seeing him come to every cohort meeting with the staff. So
it's got commitment.
So
we are committed toward the startup.
And that's it basically in a very small nutshell. Then we've also in parallel with the program, we have come up with this social impact agenda, which is run in parallel to the program, and it is a way where we ask the startups participating in the program to give back to the Maltese ecosystem, since we are dispersing public money. And this consists of a set of events, activities, such as organizing a workshop, a meetup, maybe a lecture on a specific strength that the startup has. Could be coding, could be digital marketing, whatever it is. So I think it's a very, very exciting opportunity. Maybe later I can mention something about Malta Enterprise and how we
Yes,
connect.
I've made some notes here as well. Steve,
So,
some early stage funding,
Yeah.
preliminary steps.
So I think here we, especially when it comes to the blockchain space, we are in a situation where early stage will not be sufficient. Why? Because unless you plan not to run an ICO, VFO, STO, there are so many O's, I'm getting lost. There was another one the other day. ICO.
We have some.
Unless you plan not to do that, and you go the conventional, traditional funding rounds, starting with Alex and then ending up with big investors, and you want to run one of these O's, you will have huge costs to begin with. So huge that they will not be covered by the conventional friends and families, angels and seeds. You really need VCs to come in very, very early. And there you're going to have a problem, because the VCs, they are not accustomed to taking on the risks of such an early stage. And this is where, speaking of what I'm doing, this is where I think I come into the picture, because I heard at the conference someone from the venture side saying, well, this is like business as usual. We just look at companies as we always do, and we see a good team, good enthusiasm, and we go for the team. I think even that is not sufficient from an investor perspective, because right now this space is more risky than anyone else. And if someone on the investor side had that attitude way back when we had the .com bubble, I think many of them would be very much hurt. I see Carol.
I don't agree.
I know. At that time, many would have got badly hurt, and they were. So I think this is where it becomes very significant for an investor to be able to assess the risks that new startups are, of course, carrying. Some are more risky, some are less risky. And of course, it's the whole package. If you have a good team, good product, good business model, you will make it. The problem is that the investor is not able to discern this in the current situation of the industry. So that's where I'm typically helping investors to do their risk assessments. For them, this is just a new asset class, but there are not many subject matter experts on this asset class that can tell them, yes, this is a good one, that is not such a good one. If you're able to convince these heavyweight investors that your proposition is valid, well, then you will get the funds that you need now to cover the cost of compliance, to develop a reasonable MVP, because if you want to be certified here in Malta, you need to have something to show, which gets certified by the MDIA. And as we know, running an ICO or one of these many O's has also a huge cost of marketing, PR, communication that a normal startup would not sustain. Put those three costs together and you're at a level of capital requirement that the early stage investors are not able to cover.
David, do you have some, because I know you're more on the tech side, you coming from the investor space, do you agree with what Steve's saying?
I mean, I think there are ICOs and there are ICOs. One of the beauties of blockchain and one of the dangers of it too is that in a world where, as Steve rightly pointed out, law is geofenced like Netflix, right? It doesn't quite work the same way in every jurisdiction. You have a choice. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time talking to my clients about is Malta. It's been on the agenda recently, is Singapore, Hong Kong, these various jurisdictions that are making a lot of noise. There are places where you can do an ICO in a less expensive way. There are places where people will act and get paid at the end. Whether that's a good thing or not is a completely different question and one that we may or may not cover. But I think there are choices. I think if you look at the US model, they've accepted that you need a venture fund to come in and then you do your Reg A plus offering and you do it in this restricted way. And that's what they're happy with and that's what they're comfortable with. I think in other territories, it's still the Wild West a little bit and it's still kind of slinging up there. People are doing it without any real capital requirement, which I think is too dangerous. There is a middle ground, in my view, that you can come to.
I see you nodding. Are you in agreement or?
Well, so I just give you a little bit of my experience.
Yes, please.
Just 1 month ago, I came back from a big Asia tour, and I've been speaking on 12 conferences, mostly about regulation in Malta. And also I was listening to a lot of ICO pitches and to investor dinners and all these things. And I've come to the conclusion that at the moment, the ICOs have really a hard time raising money.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think that's everywhere in the world true. And in Asia, as you know, as our Asian partners told you, the Korean ones, at the moment, the market for ICOs in Korea, for example, is seen as dead. And they're all looking into the new O's, as you so nicely said. Actually, the people need money to raise funds, so it is a little bit different. And we have investment funds also in Malta, there's one, which I personally know, which will give you the seed funding up to 500,000 to get the ball rolling. Means including all the proper setup, getting regulated and everything else. But
Will you name them? Can you name them? Or is it confidential still?
For now, yes, because
Okay.
we're negotiating with them in one of our projects.
Hey, we're here to learn, so I'm gonna ask. That's my job.
But if they agree
Are you
next
sure
time,
you can't tell us?
maybe next time.
Maybe later with the wine.
So yes, when we finish our round, then I'm happy to pass the contact on afterwards. Let me secure my funding first. And we learned actually that ICO, yes, we also do an ICO for our exchange, but that's more for marketing now. And actually we are closing our first money what we need to finish the platform. I mean, we financed a lot of it ourselves. We have our live demo of the exchange already presented at Malta Blockchain Summit. We have been exhibiting there. I think it was quite nice. I don't know if so many of you was there. Yeah, you was there. So we are quite advanced, I would say, even without the money that we get in. But I see that a lot of ICOs have a hard time because they need to raise funds first, but they need money for being regulated before they can raise funds. So it's kind of a hand and egg problem. And I think now it's really the time, if you have an opportunity to get some seed funding, don't be greedy on some shares, just get it done, get some money in and get started, because also time is a factor. So yeah, I would say a little bit back to old school. The market gets more mature. People want to get something for their money. It's not 2016 anymore. 2017 was harder, and 2018 for ICOs is like, I think we're already in minus. Huh?
I need to add something.
Sure.
Because I think these reflections are really indicative of the view of this new tool as something conventional and traditional. In fact, I heard many speakers at the conference in these last 2 days, and even confirmed by what you two just said now, that yes, the ICO is dead and it's all STO. What we're doing here is quite different. Now, first of all, I agree that it's good to have jurisdictional choices, and many times it might be more convenient to run your one-time event of fundraising with an ICO, say in Singapore, rather than Malta, because there the cost of compliance is much less. But looking at the long-term perspective of when your technology is operational, so you've raised your funds and then you're running your technology, there is no other place, as far as I know, that is taking care of that aspect. Malta, with the MDIA and the certification of the technology and the requirements to keep a so-called technical administrator always on call to guarantee that that technology is doing what it's supposed to do, is something we're seeing in no other place. Going back to the STO, ICO, the VFO, it's the third option, which other countries have not recognized yet. They will copy us, I'm sure. No doubt about
I like
that.
how you say us. Steve, are you Maltese now? Almost.
Almost. I have been in so much that it is us now, right?
Sorry, you're saying VCO,
no.
sorry.
Yeah, they will copy us. Why? Because this VFO actually has another dimension that is not the one of the token and not the one of the security. Because we're seeing that this is, yes, a token, call it what you want, but it's the container of smart value, of smart money, because you can attach to it all these smart contracts. Maybe Johan will want to comment on this. So that this token, in its life cycle from its mining or inception and when it goes through the interactions between the players of whatever it is you're doing, might actually change nature while it is being used. So it's not a one-time thing that is there to raise capital and to pay for the consumption of a service. This is still the old way of thinking that thing is a bill, is a piece of paper that is a promise of value, nothing else. This thing contains logic. This thing is executable code, and that means it can change its aspect as it goes along. The VFO is making space for this new thing. And yes, it also carries value, it also carries money. That's why it is a tool to raise funds, but it's much, much more. That's why if you have that kind of token, which is not only a utility, and it's not only a security, but you're really doing a blockchain application, a decentralized application, and most ICOs we've seen so far have just been empty promises and had no technical weight in terms of advancing the state of the art of decentralized computation solutions. Well, this is another game entirely.
Okay, I'm gonna play non-moderator now and just give some comments.
We knew that. We were waiting for it.
No, I've been moderating for 2 days now, and it's hard for me not to have an opinion. So,
Of course.
okay, so from the equity ICO perspective, like I said, prior to the whole blockchain part of my life, which has been the last year and a half, I was running an equity focused VC, right? And transitioning even my mindset to the ICO was a challenging one. However, it is pretty much the same thing done a little bit differently. I know that sounds like an oxymoron in itself, but really and truly, the elements of the team still are very important. Like if you've got shithead on one side trying to do something and just get your money as a VC, then I'm not going to invest in a shithead. So then the technical aspects of the product or the platform that's being built are, yes, very different to maybe traditional technology, but the business models, the distribution, the overarching framework of what a business plan consists of is still very much concentric to, it's the same thing. It's same but different, right? Because what we're doing is we're disrupting upon a layer of something that's existed for a very long time. When it comes to the capital raise, I for one was watching these ICOs and treading with a lot of caution personally, and I participated only in one ICO, and the ICO I participated in was that of Unicorn. Why did I participate in the ICO of Unicorn personally? And this is not from my VC hat. I participated in that because I felt that there was a synergy to what that token would enable me to do within that platform. I love esports, I understand the gambling aspect. It made sense for me as an investor to participate in that ecosystem. And I think that the more I start to look at white papers and read the copied lines of other white papers in other white papers, and just the other day I was with a group of investors who pointed at an entrepreneur who got quite a good amount of exposure at the summit, said that white paper consists of 10 paragraphs, each taken from the top ICOs that have been done in the last year. Made me kind of laugh a bit because I was just like, really? It's just like, no, I will actually show this to you because so the ICO thing is like, it's something that looked like, I think, came into the world or came into the startup space as something like, we can potentially fund ourselves in a smart technology way, which I love. I love technology automation, all down with that. But it started off as very much a community trust and belief in an individual or in a product, and it then people got greedy. And when people get greedy, not only does it counter what Satoshi is all about with Bitcoin and blockchain, which really disturbs me on a personal level, it also ruins it for everybody else who does want to really provide value with their technologies. So now, a couple of, back in March, I was starting up my own blockchain startup in KYC, AML, and identity, specifically to service Forex and gambling companies. And what I did is I took the traditional sense of startup. First of all, I bootstrapped myself slightly. I went to family and friends and people who trusted me in the community. I had a heap of people whispering, and this is back then, I still could have done a very successful ICO. Out of principle, I did not want to do an ICO because I did not want to raise capital or do anything around an ICO without having something tangible to show my investors. I'm from the little bit old school, and people can criticize me for it. I like to show people that I'm going to give them something and show them that I've got a bit of beef on the bone before I go and raise mine. And by doing this, it allowed me to be a little bit more selfish with my equity. Because one thing that I've experienced with a lot of startups that I've seen is that the less you have cards to hold, the more you're going to have to give away. And whilst I understand, like, being generous with equity is fine to a certain extent, especially in a token economy, the way we move towards a token economy, please don't give over 50% of your company to VCs. That's ridiculous. Not only does that leave you without anything to eventually barter with at a later stage, we don't know where the ICO equity space is going to go. So what happens when maybe this ICO or VCO thing doesn't articulate in the same way, or what happens with ICOs happens to VCOs? I don't know, I'm just speaking hypothetically, and I'm really hoping that you're going to counter me, Steve, strongly, because I love arguing with you. So But I think that it's also about like don't put too much on the table, because essentially you want to, as an entrepreneur, what's in it for me? You know, I want to be motivated to continue to deliver, and let's be honest, money does motivate. So that's my point on that. The other thing I wanted to pick on, and sorry, because now it's like a Carla monologue, is that startups in this space, in a regulatory space, do cost more money. And you do need to be thinking about that in your business plans and your projections. And I actually have some hands-on experience about this. By the way, I didn't start my startup, I stopped. I had raised 5 million in equity position in my company from investors that I knew who were coming into my company. I felt that the technology wasn't what I really envisioned. My CTO was proposing an on-chain, off-chain solution. I'm very decentralized in my energy is towards a decentralized ecosystems. So I thought, you know what, this is going to be around for a while. I'm just going to think a little bit more about this, get educated around this space, and take steps in the future. So I'm not a startup founder of an identity platform, clear. Prior to that, in the VC, I was working as a deputy CEO in an incubator project that was working not in the blockchain space, but under the MFSA. And due to the requirements stipulated by the MFSA for this company, they were obliged to have certain positions in place. They were doing a monthly burn of 240,000 pre-launch. That's a lot of money. So sometimes compliance and regulation do make you need to have a little bit more money in the bank. So I do agree with some of the points that regulation and being part of a regulatory kind of trajectory can cost more money than you would originally anticipate prior to that. Now I need somebody else to take the microphone, because otherwise I'm going to start singing and dancing.
I don't know where to start. I have comments about what everyone said, but let's start step by step. Maybe we can start a bit on the ICOs and also a bit about the local scene and funding and where we started. Regarding ICOs, let's see where we started. The idea of an ICO was that founders issue tokens, other companies or other people get these tokens without getting equity. The first thing was, I can build my startup without actually giving equity out. Now, I think on the 2nd, 3rd November 2018, I think we're all in agreement that this thing is not actually working, and that's why we're dropping the I and making an S and other things, because maybe the decentralized world thought that it could live without VCs, without big funding and all that, and I think in reality it cannot. So I think we went around a whole circle, and for me we're very close to where we started. That investors and business angels need to be present in the ecosystem, and they are a key element of any startup ecosystem. We cannot do without VCs and angel investors and all the others. Regarding the local scene, not only the local scene, actually the global scene. I think one of the things that this decentralization and this crypto world brought is a lot of ideas. I think if all of them, like we've seen, there is a lot of not so well thought out ideas out there, but believe me, everyone you meet has some kind of idea that he or she wants to put on blockchain. It's like a renaissance of ideas that we've seen a lot of ideas, and it's an exciting time to live in a time where there are a lot of people with a lot of ideas. Obviously, what is happening is that only the good ideas survive. Coming then to the local scene, It's also exciting times because apart from obviously something like the Meta Innovation Hub, we're also seeing, for example, Go at Delta Summit. They announced that they have a 2 million fund to work with startups, and from the information that we gathered as Silicon Valley, other companies, other local and international companies want to do the same. So if you do some research as well, there are other, not only government but also private companies who even not local, who have funds that they want to be very active in startups. So
But Jonathan, they're going equity. They're not.
yeah, definitely. No, I'm saying it's
the money's there, but
the money's
it's
there.
equity.
The money's there. The money's there. Definitely, as I said, it won't be an ICO and they just buy your tokens. They are going to ask a share of your company. And here, I think one thing that is missing in the whole ecosystem, and more than missing, I think it's something of a development in the ecosystem, is through things like what the Meta Innovation Hub is doing. We are getting our startups on the start line. However, I think we need to. There is a big education gap. A lot of the startups I mentor do not know the financial jargon of what is seed funding. Like they go and Google what is seed funding. Round A, B, C. You need to tell them what it is, and that there is like at stages through the lifetime of the startup. They need to be funding in different ways. I think this is something that I believe is the next thing, and that's your question was how can startup grind help in the ecosystem, and I think in the education definitely it's something that startup grind can help, and basically I am here on this chair because when you told me what your 3 values are, I said these are values that I share, and that's why I'm here.
Yes, he's going to argue with me.
You said many things, but I really didn't get where you're disagreeing.
No, I'm joking.
Anyway, let me first address a thing that Johan said.
Yeah.
Because I think we have here a very interesting reflection to do, because Johan said we're back to square one. No, we're not at all back to square one, because this new push towards regulation, whether it is in the US with the SEC or UK with the FCA or Malta with the Virtual Financial Assets Act, what this new regulatory requirement is having as a consequence, not only is it what we said before, higher cost of compliance, but it is actually going to push the real innovators in the decentralized computation space to become even more aggressive. So we will have, no doubt, decentralized exchanges. We will have, no doubt, decentralized ICO platforms, where the original ICO, the one that you mentioned that was there in order to reach the investor directly with no one in between, will come back to life. And then the question is, well, how do we protect the investor in that space? That's very difficult because it's totally decentralized. You cannot regulate it. It's going to be out of this, well, tangible space. And that's why we're starting to think in terms of legal personality. If I'm going to build a decentralized ICO platform and I have the option of giving it legal personality, and of course certain obligations to give it the right behaviors and so on, I think that will give the return of the original ICO intent a second life. So how do we ensure that these are not scams and they keep their promises? Well, the smart contracts that will be implementing the applications promised by the ICO issuer will have to be concrete. They will have to be there. Like Carlos said, you need an MVP to show off exactly. If you want to run an ICO, even on one of these decentralized platforms, well, we will require that there is something to show off that. So I think that, yes, we will have more regulation now, and that will raise the bar. But at the same time, this is pushing the thrust towards further decentralization even more. And that's why I like this so much. We are using regulation to create innovation in the space of decentralization. Now I want to hear where it was we were disagreeing.
Yeah.
On the business, on the investor knowledge to come into the space being different. So like the investors not being able to apply traditional knowledge to the blockchain technology investment side of things.
No, I didn't say traditional knowledge. They still apply all what they do, but it's the precise function of risk assessment. They are not equipped with the knowledge to do the proper risk assessment.
Well, let's ask David. You're investing in blockchain, right?
No, I'm a lawyer.
Sorry, you have a question.
Question.
Yeah, sure. I'll finish this one. So you're not investing
I
in.
work with investors.
Okay, you're working with investors.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
are they
right.
saying about the technical?
Yeah.
Well, Steve's question.
Yeah. Thank you. So actually, that's interesting because over the years they've got more comfortable going in and looking at the technical aspects of things. Historically, I think it was much more based on business plan and slide deck and all those sorts of things. I think over the last few years, particularly as we've had more ex-founders coming through as VCs, particularly out of Scandinavia and Western Europe, we've seen a lot more people who are very comfortable with the idea that they can get under the hood and have a look at the code. I don't think we're there yet with full sort of, full service blockchain consultancy and people going in and actually unpicking every single thing. But I think there is an expectation that there is a solid basis of technology there, and whether necessarily every VC is in a position to assess that, I don't know. I think they would all tell you that they have, but whether or not they necessarily have, I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Can I just, before we move on from the ICO is dead, this is a phrase that gets dogs abuse, but I think the rumours of the ICO's death have been greatly exaggerated.
Not really that, but
Right.
it's very hard for them to raise money.
Yeah.
I think
When they say MVP,
The
Yeah.
headline is ICO is dead,
Totally,
and then
yes.
we can dig down as to what kind of ICO,
right.
what product behind the ICO, right?
Right, and if somebody's saying, oh no, nobody will give me 50 million for free for my tokens, fair, and I cry for them. But
Do you
But-
really?
I do, regularly. But there is still a world for this, right? There is still a raise of 3, 4, 5 million, plus you acquire a user base for free. What the hell? This isn't dead. This is an incredibly useful tool. And people are just, because you can't raise 20, because you can't do a Telegram or whatever it is, maybe not that one. But just because you can't raise 9 figures doesn't mean it's not useful. So I would encourage people, I think it's absolutely correct what everybody's saying. Those days are not these days. But I think there's a huge opportunity in doing an old-fashioned ICO, from 2016, ICO, just on a sensible number.
Yes.
And
No,
don't
that's-
buy £1 million
That's
worth
a
of
really
Facebook.
good point, sensible number. Does anybody want to contribute, please, to the discussion we're having, or have a question at this stage? Yeah, come up and say hi. Hi.
Oh yeah,
Good. How are you?
good. I just think on the
Name?
Barry Keane
Hi, Larry.
from Ireland.
From Ireland.
I just think with the ICO scene, I think it's more, if it's a good product, people will go for it. And it doesn't matter if it's 2 million or 3 million, you can get a 30 million. It depends on the product, it depends on what you're giving back. But it's more or less it. I just think that, I don't think that people should be saying that it's, the ICOs are finished. There's definitely more of, you give someone if you come up with a good project, you put enough interest in it. That's basically all.
Thank you, Barry. Nice. More? Yes? No, you're not.
Actually, I want to ask something about the Meta project, Meta Goal. So we arrived as a foreigner company in Malta with a beautiful welcome. They actually grant us 30K, and we are starting. So now we are actually thinking about the future of our company. We have the kind of opportunity to start, which is very important. We had enough knowledge, but what's next? So we don't know where we are going to find the real funding in Malta. We know outside, but if we want to get funding in Malta, we don't know yet.
Yeah, I partly agree with what you say, because the startup ecosystem in Malta is really still in its early stages, and if you compare it to the Estonian model, where they had a vision of 15-20-year vision. They were split into activation phase. Second phase was growth. The third was internationalization, and the fourth was integration. If we had to use that benchmark, Malta would probably still be towards the end of the activation phase. So what we're seeing now is really a lot of the part of government, a lot of funding of early stage. But I think now what is missing is the next, follow-on program. Now, if that follow-on program can somehow be, that gap could be filled by VCs or business angels, I don't know. I think that what's happening now with the blockchain is, it can serve as an attractor, I believe, because it's also creating that pull factor. I'm not familiar with the VC world, and I know that Malta does not have a culture in VC. But perhaps now with blockchain, the situation will change. Now, to answer your question as to what can happen in your case following the Meta, the 4-month acceleration program, I am aware that Malta Enterprise have a loan, a startup loan, or I forgot the exact wording, but it's like 100,000 loan, and they have repackaged it to address the need on the part of startups that want to run an ICO. So essentially to cover the cost of regulation. So now, apart from that, we are very willing, and we have connected startups coming out of our program to investors. So, perhaps
I can mention a few other ones.
So in terms of Malta Enterprise, they actually have 3 different initiatives plus one other one. So there's a 100,000 one, then there's a 250,000 one, then there's the loan one that's in packages, like the loan one's of 100,000. Then there's another one that can be done if you have the capital, then they will match the capital. So there's like 25K in 25K increments. Plus they also do a tax benefit structure. So it's really worth looking into how that could potentially follow on. However, there's also, apart from following kind of the incubation phase, let's call it, like the very, very nimble starts of what Alex and his program does, there's also the Chile's blockchain campus now, and they are tightly connected with the Binance Accelerator. Now, the Binance Accelerator doesn't technically operate out of Malta, but I assume that it's in their intention moving forward to be part of the Maltese community. I'm still digging to get more detail about that one. There's also something with the stock exchange. I believe that there's a fintech accelerator working with the stock exchange.
And
Not exactly an accelerator.
it's some kind of program, isn't it?
Looks more like an incubator.
It's more of an incubator thing. All right, but I'm just mentioning things, and then we can find more info. If anybody finds what I'm saying interesting, ask us, and we'll try and figure it all out. Because this is what we're here for, right? To facilitate. And there's also the European Union, the Horizon 2020. Funding opportunities, and they go up to 2.5 mil. They do have another category now, which I haven't dug into. Yeah, the Startup Europe, and Malta being European Union, you're all eligible for that as well. But they actually do have a subset now that somebody, I can't remember who, was telling me about, that's going to be focusing on blockchain research, R&D. So there is access to funds, and then there are groups of accelerate, like more institutional investors on the island looking at early stage startups. I know 5 or 6 off the top of my head. I don't know if they're broadcasting it, like you were mentioning before. A lot of them are still very early stage, but like you've got, like Johan mentioned, Go. They're looking for an early position.
There
That's
are a lot more,
like,
and 5 or 6 even
yeah.
more.
And we're trying, like in my perspective right now, I'm still trying to gather them, because a lot of them are kind of just working in their own stylos, which is a bit of a shame. So I think that we have a little bit of maybe work on our end, Alex, now to find the next connectors. So if you employ me at Meta, I'll do that for you.
Well, we can still cooperate.
We can always cooperate, I'm joking. Can I have another
Question over here?
You come.
Come up and introduce yourself, please. Hi.
I have no voice, sorry. I'm Valerio, and I just want to say my contribution to your speak. So, it's my personal point of view to the ICO. It's according to me, it's the creation of a new world according to the great economist Schumpeter. It's a disruptive creation. It's you can create innovation from a statistical point of view. If a lot of different kind of startups can find enough money, someone will develop some great innovation to the world. So this intermediation is needed for this, to achieve innovation around the world and to achieve innovation in a decentralized way. And ICO is something like that. But the problem is that ICO are over-abused. There are too many ICOs to do everything. You don't need the blockchain to do everything. You need the blockchain and also the consensus algorithm and the incentive from the economic theory to do something and not everything. And mostly of all, especially you don't need the blockchain to track some data that are not tracked from the beginning. You need something like an oracle to certify the data. There is a problem from the data that you put on the blockchain. If the data are not certified at the beginning, you can certify it after, but then you have the problem that came from the beginning. So that's my personal point of view. The world is changing, the costs are becoming higher, this world will be a lot bigger and bigger in the next few months, according to me, because all the financial institutions are coming inside this world, bringing new exchanges, bringing new gateway to get in this world, and according to me, we'll see a new FOMO period. It's not so far away, we'll see. So I just want to thank you for your contribution. That's my personal point of view. Thank you very much.
Come to the front. Somebody back there had something to say? Just come up.
No? I think what...
Yeah, we
yeah?
have one. Please,
Come
on.
up here. Makes it easier for us.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Loic. Nice to meet you all. I'm not into blockchain, but I just have a question about it, and all you spoke about blockchain regulations and governance. And actually, the world is changing, and the geopolitics are moving, and we have different countries also changing of governments, and how the blockchain actors deal with this, because it's a revolution of technology, but in the other side you have a geopolitics which is changing, so it might be hard to deal with different governments. And what do you think about this? I don't know, it's a question.
It's a great one, thank you. wants to take it? I can start off.
Well, I have a couple of ideas.
Here.
No, I mean, it's something which I've always liked to reflect on. I mean, I think we're living through an age which is so dynamic and so disruptive that I think that even governments and borders, I think, are going to be challenged in the coming years. I mean, I believe The Economist was running a set of workshops in different countries, challenging the old view of statesmanship. So I wonder if blockchain could be the start of this new world order, which is scaring a lot of people, because if you see that what's happening in the world, you know, beginning from Trump, Brexit, to what's happening in Poland and Slovakia and Italy, and this populist movement, it's very, very clear that people are afraid of the change. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question, but
I think
maybe blockchain is the start. I think
there is no specific answer, but as it's a new technology and it's new, there is a lot of reflection about blockchain and this technology, and there is a lot of actors which are trying to find the best regulation, which are speaking with governments, because governments need to find a legal thing for blockchain, and I don't know how they deal with it because the government are changing. So it might be hard for blockchain actors to do things well and dealing with governments.
actually maybe something that governments are not doing, and maybe here Steve can say something about it, is engage in because the debate that is happening about around blockchain is actually engaged in by the insiders or the people interested in blockchain. But then there isn't a debate about blockchain among the outsiders. And I think that one big gap is that governments are not trying to engage the wider public in even an ethical debate about blockchain. And I see it even in Malta, because when you talk to people, the lay person, the answer is, oh, blockchain. Blockchain is, Bitcoin, and there's a lot of sleaze around it, and and cartels and drugs, whatever. So, and I think people need to be informed, and I think that is not happening.
Can
I don't know what you believe.
Can we have
Yes,
one
we
of
have
our?
Daniel there. And
Yeah, would
Emily
love.
Carlos.
You're an internet friend of mine. Hi. We're friends on the internet.
Yeah, just
Well,
my
can you
impression
please
is,
introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, I'm
Say
Daniel.
what
I
you
You
do.
can become friends with him on the internet.
I'm Daniel. I started a Cocoa Hub. Basically, we have this mission to build like communities of location-independent people all over the world. This is what we do. The first year is in Malta, 180 guests. We had this fun. So, but I guess now blockchain will succeed or not. I guess we need to have a discussion on the higher level, because it's just like on a higher abstraction level. So we started it, we are all barefoot hippies, out of mobiles and out of ethnics, right? We had the first people coming here in suits. I was just asking, what is your role? It's not about will it succeed or not, it's about can we challenge how power structure in the world is working or not, right? And this is what we need to discuss. This is the question.
Yeah.
This is.
I'm part of a hippie group of people that go up mountains twice a year and just chill out and talk about all things blockchain. And one of the people that I met there is the founder of Aragon Network. If you look at it, if anybody this is all I'm going to say. Go onto that website, watch the video. That's what I truly feel that I can synergize with in terms of where we'll go in the future.
So there are many aspects here. Even if all governments of the world by magic dissolved the moment I stop speaking, which some will say will never happen. You should laugh there. Even if all governments dissolved, The moment after, even in the most extreme libertarian viewpoint, you would still have individuals interacting and gathering and implicitly creating their own social contracts and norms. And maybe if you don't agree with one group, you can easily migrate to another group. So it's just in the nature of like the tribal nature of us human that we want to congregate with people with whom we have some resonance that we feel comfortable with. And when we like contemplate this thing that we have groupings of people with different rules without distinguishing whose rules are the right ones, well, we have a problem because the blockchain is global and it's covering all grounds. The Aragon project, I think, is like pointing out the right direction, but we will still, for a long time, be in this situation where we have different jurisdictions with different laws, hopefully for a long time, so that they can compete and figure out which one is best. It would be terrible if there was just like one unifying law for the whole globe, and that is also a risk. And here I want to offer another insight into what is going on with the legal personality thing, because we are thinking about exactly these aspects. Here in Malta, there is a legal tool which is the so-called the securitization cell company and the protected cell company. So basically, it's a notion of a cell. How coincidental that corresponds to what I just said, that you have congregation of people that decide to be together because they have certain social norms and rules that they share. So what is the idea here is that if you have a DIO that registers in Malta, takes up the legal personality here, makes the jurisdiction of choice in Malta, but then maybe delivers its services in Germany, and I make the example of the insurance company because we have an instance of that going on here, and in Germany you have different insurance rules. If you have like one global smart contract, that doesn't work. But if that smart contract can be tailored for the German situation, it will work there from a technical perspective, but not from a juridical perspective. So we envision that the DAO can like fork, spawn off a copy of itself, and that one will be taking care of the German situation under a cell structure, which says my jurisdiction of choice, notwithstanding that we are in Malta and registered in Malta, my jurisdiction of choice will be Germany, and I will be compliant with all the German regulations and rules, which might be completely different from what we have in Malta.
We are running on 1 hour. Do we want to make some comments? Yeah, just to answer the questions, and then I think we could probably just take casual conversations, maybe with some drinkies.
Yes, it's downstairs actually.
Downstairs? Okay, but cool. Let's
Yeah, just to comment on decentralization and geopolitical changes. I think through the last 2 days ago, we celebrated 10 years of the Satoshi Nakamoto paper. And obviously from there, all of us started thinking of decentralization, and even myself, I read a lot about decentralization. Projects like Aragon were born. Go and check it out. This Aragon, it's really something.
Makes you think. They might not have everything, but it does
Something.
make you
It's
think.
really something interesting. And even I thought of like a total decentralized world where everything would be decentralized. I think on the 3rd November 2018, at least I feel that the future I want to see is that there are lots of things that should be decentralized. However, we all understood that even this decentralization, number one, needs rules. And our most common form of rules are the laws, and the laws are made by government. So I think we need to, like, instead of being on the poles of being I'm for total decentralization, or I'm for total government, and I don't like the decentralization. I think slowly we are going to find a middle ground where things start to make sense, where we have total systems which are decentralized. However, they can coexist with our governments. Last week, I was giving a lecture at university, and I gave them the example of a smart contract, examples of smart contracts, and at one point, I made the mistake that I told them there are also systems where you can put your will on as a smart contract. And then they asked me, and what happens, who assures that the person actually died? And I wasn't prepared to answer that. So yeah, no, there will be, I told them there will be there will be the government of, okay. So it was like, I gave them the wrong example. There needs to be rules, there needs to be some form of organization. Our society needs to be organized, but I think the idea of having decentralized organizations, DAOs, decentralized exchanges, this decentralized ride sharing with our cars and vehicles, that's wonderful, but I don't think that we can live without having some form of government, whatever we call it.
Closing comments? Yeah? Thank you.
Actually, I also think that now with blockchain, we have the possibility to change a lot of things, and it is a good time to do that. But of course, this will be a slow process, and it will not mean that tomorrow we are all free and everybody does what he wants, because that's not what nobody wants. You don't want to have a situation where everybody runs around and goes crazy because he thinks now we are free from the government. And that's also nothing what blockchain will do in the near future. So I think, yes, we live in exciting times and we will change the world, and all of us, all our projects, but it's maybe not that rebellious like many people may think, and not in a hippie-style community which will grow from tomorrow and the whole world will turn into a camping place.
You're going to change the world. Yeah, I mean, there are 3 points, I guess, I would make.
Yeah.
I think one of them is we talk about decentralization like Americans talk about democracy, as though it's a synonym for virtue. And it's actually not. You know, an election is a decentralized thing where every person gets to make a contribution.
I think this is a very, very important point, actually. Thank
I have
you
some
for saying
recent
this.
personal experience of some
Thank you for saying
decentralized decisions that have not gone very well for me. And maybe still a little bitter. But, you know,
I don't dare ask them what
I
they were.
probably would. But I'm not saying the B word. But I do think decentralization will occur, and I think the big thing that will happen over the next probably 2-3 years will be that this technology will normalize and people will stop talking about blockchain. Because at the moment, you know, I'm a lawyer who does a load of work with blockchain. That won't be a distinction in 3 years because all lawyers will be working with companies that work with blockchain, and that's when we will know. And that's when the decentralization will really take hold, is when we stop talking about, hey, there's this awesome blockchain company that does this thing. We'll just say, hey, there's this awesome company that does this thing. That's when you'll know that it's coming, I think. So when that normalizes, I think we'll see a real change.
Very nice.
One final comment from me. We're here to celebrate the chapter of Startup Grind. I'm really happy that this is actually happening for the startup ecosystem of Malta. I encourage you all, you came to the first one, make sure that you, Andrea said that this is going to be a monthly thing. I encourage you from now that you start coming. We discussed a bit that it is exciting times for the community, the physiques are there, the ideas are there, the startups are there. We need to link them. So make sure you take this opportunity.
Yes, I think that this blockchain space, even if in 3 years we will not mention it, because it will be business as usual, will offer incredible opportunities for startups to come up with completely new ideas. So any initiative like this one, the Startup Grind, and also Alex and everyone else here, Silicon and so on, it's good to see that this ecosystem of startup facilitators is developing here in Malta, because just a few years ago the situation was really depressing, let's put it that way. So it's going in the right direction. Yes, there are still problems, as you are highlighting. What is the next step? Attracting capital, real heavy capital from where it is, I think becomes an important thing to work on, and maybe we'll be able to pull that off. Last reflection, the technology is amazing, it's decentralized, but we are not. We are flesh and blood creatures, we socialize, we often disagree, but we love that
but
too.
But we love that, and we agree on a lot of things, Steve, you and I.
No,
just on business,
we're just
business
going.
pitches. That's
exactly. So because of this, we cannot get away from the reflection that we are subject to the systems of law of where we are living. And if we don't like those systems of laws, decentralization is not a solution. Either you go away, you go to another place that is better for you, or you become an activist, a politician, and try to change the system from within. And maybe changing the system from within with the support of the technology is not a bad idea.
I mean, I don't really have a concluding note in the sense that, again, linking up with Startup Grind is, I believe, one of the goals for this discussion was how can Startup Grind can help grow the Maltese ecosystem. Now, I think the good thing about the way the startup ecosystem has been growing is that it's a bottom-up, mostly bottom-up. So, but I think that a point that was mentioned earlier, I believe it was you, about the need for validation by the startups. I mean, the startups that we see are really, very often they base their business idea on an untested hypothesis. And I think that founders need to be educated on how important it is to be very detailed in their validation process. I don't know if that is an area where Startup Grind can help, especially founders based and ideators based in Malta. That I think is something which requires addressing.
These are all suggestions for the next speaker. For example, validation, we identify a speaker, we invite him here, maybe from London, from somewhere else. We can ask whatever we want. And all the people in the
Yeah, I have some people in mind. Okay, that's right.
That's fine.
Thank you all for being here and for being so patient as well with us and exploring these topics with us. I did have how can we contribute to making Startup Grind bigger, more popular, and also more rewarding in terms of what you decide to come here and spend 2 hours. Hopefully we're going to tick the boxes off. So if you do have any feedback about topics, I personally would be very happy to receive them along with Andrea, just so that we kind of get a bit of a feeling as to what you guys have in mind for your expectations. But thank you all for being here, and let's go drink some more. Let's just go have a nice drink and get to know each other. Thank you so much.